Hello everybody, I'm Dennis Church and this is my guest curator, Herbad Human.
Hello.
And Herbad had a lot to do with helping me put this show together, pick pictures, sequence pictures. We also did a book which is on the other side of this panel wall. I met Herbad maybe 6 months ago.
A year.
About that. A year?
Yeah, almost.
Okay. So I didn't know him at all at the time, and we got together for lunch a couple times to talk, and I'm always wanting to show photographs, so he looked at my pictures and he liked them. I'm glad you did. And so one thing led to another, and he kept making comments about my photography. And about that time, Heather, come on up here, Heather. If you all don't know Heather Couch, she's the head curator here at the gallery and assistant professor of art here at Palm Beach Atlantic. And we ran into Heather, my partner and I, Renee, and she said, "Oh, my artist for fall canceled." And I sent my ESP waves at her, and she says, "Could you show at that time?" I says, "You betcha." Anyway, so that's how it all came about. And so we were going to do a little catalog for the show. And Herbad and I kept looking at pictures, looking at a lot of pictures, and said, "Oh, we have enough here for a book," which we have here tonight, as I mentioned. So that's how the book came about. And our plan is to tour the book and then have a show from the book at different venues. So that's in the planning stages. So I'm gonna turn it over to Herbad just briefly because I'm out of ideas at the moment. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hello, everybody. Let me start in a different way, first of all. What these photos. I want to talk to you about the new approach toward observing art. Our brain is going to go to a phase to start separating every little form, shape, elements from each other. That's how we understand our surrounding. And as soon as we start that process in our brain, we kind of disconnect ourselves from that whole, that unity, that artistic value that is behind the beauty. We call it harmony. Unfortunately, by mistakes, when we go detail, we call it curiosity. But curiosity is not that. That's separations, that dividing things. Curiosity is a stay into that whole, to that unity. So tonight, I'm gonna ask you, beside observing this photo, start observing your mind and see that in tendency that your mind wants to escape, to see logos, to see colors, to see cars, to see other elements over there. And try to manage your mind to stay in that whole, in that unity, and be part of it. That new approach, first of all, helps you to understand what Dennis is doing, because he sees the whole. He sees connection. Like every different elements in these pictures, they have nothing to do with each other, but somehow they're connected with each other. That's our urban life. That's exactly how city came to pictures. That's exactly how we're living together. City is part of the nature too. Even it's artificial, but we are part of the nature. So standing in that whole and unity, understanding why we're living together. Who are we? How we're interacting with each other? How this city came to picture, and a lot of other information that our brain is blocking it, putting it in a box. It says like it's not important anymore. So I admire Dennis' job because it allowed me to see more. It allowed me to come back, to look over again. And every time I look at his photo, I see a new little things somewhere, new connections. Like when I see a lady with orange hair, I appreciate it. But in life, in my day to day, I might not even notice it. I might not even see it. In this photo, I learned that everything around me is important. Everything around me has purpose in my being. And I'm practicing to see all of them together.
Thanks, Herbad. That brings up something it's sort of related to what you asked, that, you know, I've said several times here that it's a lot of fun for me, and it's about my perception. You know, my particular physical body has a neurological setup based on my growing up experience, maybe the accident with the electricity, who knows, a lot of things. And so I make pictures based on my experience and my physical neurological makeup, and that's my perception. And I think I have a responsibility to share that perception because I get so much out of it. It helps me grow. I learn about myself so much by making photographs. Other people learn about themselves through whatever reason they do. And if it's a business or if it's a writer or there's ways to be creative in your job, whatever it is. So if I get something out of it and I share it, my goal is that whoever looks at it will learn from it. That's what you're talking about. And I think we have a responsibility to do that. That's what community is about. A couple of people were asking me earlier if I'm not sure what the word they use, if I oversaturated the color in the pictures. And the answer is, yeah, slightly when I make the print. But I like to make the print, the colors in the print, to feel like it was when I was there. Now, to somebody else's eye who was there, it may not look that saturated, but that's sort of how I see. And I'm attracted to these saturated colors. And when I was a youth, about 10 years old, I was nearly electrocuted by a 220 volt line. And I had this experience where I saw, in some sort of altered consciousness, I saw very saturated colors and shapes and stacking of forms. Hard to describe what it was. It wasn't for a very long period of time. I was lucky to survive it. But ever since, I've been attracted to saturated colors. Now, was that the reason I am? I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. And we'll never be able to prove one way or the other, but that was my experience. So I've had many people tell me, I shouldn't say many, some people say, oh, why don't you dial back the color a little bit? I said, no, that's what I saw. That's what it felt like. And that's just their perception of a scene that I perceived in a different way. So that's an interesting experience that I've had in terms of showing my work. Somebody said, do I go to any particular places to make photographs? The answer is, well, yes and no. I like to photograph wherever I'm at, and the color in a scene is often the excuse to make the picture. I'll see something, okay, so we got the orange and the red in the Love's tanker truck and the gas station. If you're driving along the highway, those colors are made for you to be attracted to see easily. And so I see it, and it's saturated very intensely by this company. So that's partly why I call it the work AmeriColor. It has a lot to do with corporate branding and the colors that are created and put out in the public sphere to attract us. But I take that and I try to have fun with it and make it into something that's not necessarily about their corporate intention. To me, it's just an excuse to have some fun with my camera. And that's a lot of what this work is about. It's the fun of looking at the world and the joy of it, frankly. So I'll stop there and we'll take questions.
It comes through. Your joy and fun in taking the pictures really comes through.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you shoot with any particular camera or lenses, or do you have a variety of lenses that you use?
I think at one time I owned like 15 different digital cameras at one time. Today I have about 3. And it doesn't matter what the camera is. These are all digital, by the way. I used to shoot black and white film for like 30 years, and I had tons of work that way. But in 2006, a friend of mine had purchased a Nikon digital camera. I said, oh, is that a good camera, Arvind? And he says, yeah, it's a fabulous camera. So the next day I went and bought one just like it. And I was off to the races. And it was like I was, I don't like this phrase, reborn, in a sense, to photography. When I first started photography, and it's 50 years next year, so I always say to people, I'm just getting started. But I was very excited about doing photography when I first started. And then I did that work for a long time, like 30 years, and I eventually, I don't know, it slowed down. And then when I got the color digital, I was, like I say, reborn to it. And I haven't stopped. So that's 20 some years of doing the color work. And
Well, one
I
thing
think-
I know that he doesn't go anywhere without camera.
I didn't bring one tonight because it was raining so hard. I didn't want to didn't ruin it. But that's a good question. So it doesn't matter the brand or the
What if
lenses.
the lens, go from 350 to or what?
If we're talking focal length in terms of 35 millimeter equivalency, I like anywhere from 35 to 105. That's the range. But most of the pictures are going to be from 50 to 70. I like that slight compression. Because what happens when you do that, you can bring something in the background flat on the focal plane, and you then establish a relationship to something that might be in front of you. And you don't necessarily think about those associations when you're just looking at it.
I have a question just about
Yes.
process. Like this photograph over here with the trash bins, that's something you come across, it's static, and you like it, and you do it. And something like this might be just serendipity. You see it, and you're there, and you do it. But let's say those photos over there. Did you, let's say, see that truck or whatever it is parked there and say to yourself, well, I'm going to wait, hopefully, for a car to come by that picks up that color? And the same thing over there with the cab. And then something entirely different too, the woman that's walking on the, with the dress, that's basically the same pattern as the street. I mean, did you see that coming? Did you see her walking on the street and say, I'm gonna nail that? Or is that another example of serendipity that you just happened to be there and you knew it would make a great photograph?
It happens both ways.
Okay.
You just have to be ready. I think there's a famous photographer, his name is Henri Cartier-Bresson. He said, you have to court chance. And so you gotta be ready. Part of it is practice. You can kind of anticipate. Okay, so I was looking at this Shell station here, which is in Miami. And I love the mural and the orange with the Shell icon or the logo. And along comes this truck with the orange wheels, etc. So, okay, I'll take it. It's a gift. But sometimes I'll wait in a situation for something that's going to add to the picture. Maybe it's going to fill in this quadrant or this part of the picture. And then it happens by accident too. The one on the left with the loves, I did not plan for that red car.
Really?
It just came, and I shot the picture. Oh my God, there was a red car. Well, I look at it later and I make an editing decision that, okay, that works. So you have to be able to accept, like you say, serendipity, but really, isn't everything is serendipitous. Pardon me?
Photographer's ESP.
Maybe, yeah. There's a question here.
Kind of piggyback off of what he said. What is the longest you've ever waited to take that capture?
I've been waiting 50 years for that one. Not really. But, that's a good question. Oh, maybe 45 minutes that I remember. I think probably 45 minutes. But in that 45 minutes, so many things can happen. If you just say, stand on a corner in a busy street and you just watch what happens, and you have a pedestrian come along that's got the same color as the building across the street, or they've got a little dog and something silly happens with the dog. Like I said, you court chance. You know something's going to happen. You don't know what it is and when. But if you're ready, you're going to increase your chances of getting those kinds of things. And that's the game of it. Another thing I like to do is, there's this phrase photographers use, how many balls can you juggle at one time? So the picture with the waterway, which is in Manhattan, New York. I mean, I'm standing there and I like the Applebee's signs, these goofy Apple signs, and I'm standing there and along comes the yellow bus, and then a yellow cab, and then the guy comes into the frame with the goofy hat. So, you know, you go for it. So there's a high rate of failure, though. You have to be able to accept a high rate of failure. They're not going to all work. I didn't show you the ones that didn't work. So, but and that's, again, that's the game of it. So you have to just be ready, willing to accept
Maybe
the different
you
things.
tell us that phone booths and that woman inside the phone booth.
I don't think we have
It's
that
inside the
in
book.
show. It's in the book. So I lived in this small town in Wisconsin, and I went to the post office, and I came out of the post office, and there's diagonally across the intersection, there's a lady sitting on a chair in a phone booth, which you don't see that very often. I don't think I've ever seen it before or since. And I thought, oh, I don't have my camera. So I drove 10 miles, 5 to my home, 5 miles back. She was still there. And the resultant photograph was great. It's one of my favorite pictures. So it was a good lesson. And so rarely do I go anywhere without the camera. So, yes.
What is your favorite place you have visited to take pictures?
Ooh. I don't know if I can answer that. I have a lot of good pictures from Manhattan because, you know, it's never nothing going on.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I like that. But I like to just pick a commercial strip and go walk it. And this picture right here is a result of that. And I like those kind of places because you have all these different colors and motion and kind of the goofy things that are created by commercial establishments. And I used to be sort of negative about those kinds of things. And then I realized, you know, businesses have restrictions on what kind of things they can do for signage and where they can place objects like that, how big their parking lot, and on and on and on. There's so much regulation. And I thought, you know, really, considering all those restrictions, all these commercial people, businesses, are very creative within those guidelines. And I thought, you know, that's, in a way, that's like the way I like to do photography. Within the guidelines of a straight, unmanipulated photograph and within a rectangle, there's this sort of a limitation, but you can still be creative within those parameters. So I kind of got off on the tangent, but that's a good question.
And literally, this process is documenting documentary photography. So he's documenting our urban settings, our today's life, things that we don't even see it in our daily basis. But imagine after 20 years you come back to these photos, after 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, you're gonna see a lot of details about who we were, where we were living, and what type of a setting, what type of a connection was between us. So that's my speech. I wrote a lot about Dennis in the book, and I don't think it's enough to say it here. The only things that Heather asked me about curations, that if you're interested to know what curator does, basically curator, in a very simple language, guides you how to enjoy a collections of art. I don't do anything. I'm like a composer who didn't wrote the basically orchestra, but helping every different instruments to play at the right timing with the right notes. So there is a lot of photo for Dennis Brains, for any other artist. They're so easy to digest. But for general public, we need to create a guideline. We need to create some sort of like curations of the pictures of the elements. And that guideline help us all to have some sort of like a common experience. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for that.